So what do we do without the ever-elusive closure? How do we grieve relationships with parents that hurt us? For children of parents who are out of Scientology but not accountable, still mentally in or deeply trapped in victimhood, creating a healing dialogue can feel like trying to explain TikTok to your grandma. It's frustrating. Engaging with a parent who won't or can't validate your pain can feel like reopening a wound you've been trying to heal for years. And yet, here we are, still craving some kind of connection with them. Because apparently, we're optimists, or maybe just suckers for punishment. But healing doesn't always require a perfect resolution, thankfully. Sometimes it's about processing the pain yourself while finding tiny, awkward baby steps toward connection or understanding. First, let's be honest, too many of us will never get resolution with our parents. Maybe they've disconnected from us, cutting off all contact because we dared to leave or speak out. Maybe they're gone, lost to illness before we could make peace. Or maybe they're still alive, but buried so deeply in Scientology's grip or their own trauma that they might as well be designated missing in action. For those of us who live with this loss, the pain can feel endless. There's no resolution, no chance to say, "Why did you let this happen?" or "Do you even regret what I endured?" It leaves a wound that festers, often turning into rage. Rage we need to aim somewhere, anywhere, just to survive. And here's the thing. It's not just anger, it's grief too. Grief for the parent we wish we had. Grief for the family dinners that never happened, the hugs we never got, the bedtime stories, all of it taking a back seat to everything Scientology. That loss feels like a death in the family, but it's actually the death of the family. Maybe it needs to be grieved and mourned. Sometimes grief hits you out of nowhere, like when you're watching a TV mom say, "I'm so proud of you, honey. Your choices, your independence, who you are." And suddenly you're crying into your cereal because you can't remember your mom ever saying anything like that. Even worse, she told you the complete opposite, always pushing you to conform to the cult instead. Just parroting garbage, thought-stopping Scientology propaganda lines like a Ron bot. Ugh. All your feelings are valid. Let them flow. Bottling just creates more pressure that has to go somewhere, often to darker, unhealthy places. So how do we accept where they are without excusing it? Okay, first things first. Your parent might be stuck. Like superglue stuck. They might be stuck in victimhood, constantly sighing about how they were betrayed by Scientology, but totally brushing off the part where they threw you to a human trafficker at age 8. "I did my best, okay?" "Sure, Mom, sure." They might be totally dismissive, hitting you with classics like, "That was a long time ago," or "You're exaggerating," which is basically their way of saying, "I'm too uncomfortable to deal with this." Or, God forbid, they might still be mentally in Scientology, justifying everything with, "It was the greatest good." Translation, "Don't blame me." Here's the kicker. You don't have to excuse any of this. You're allowed to feel hurt and angry. But accepting where they are can help you manage your expectations. They might not be able to give you the apology or accountability you deserve, yet, maybe never, and that's their limitation, not yours. And yes, it's annoying as hell. But trying to change them without their buy-in is about as effective as doing a rain dance. It's probably not happening, or at least not on demand. So who's even the real bad guy? The cult or the parent? Here's the question that keeps us all awake at night. Who's the actual criminal? Was it Scientology, the machine that exploited us and robbed us of our childhoods? Or was it our parents, who handed us over to that machine, believing it was the greatest good? The truth is, both. So it's complicated, and that's what makes healing so hard. Scientology created the system that dehumanized us, treated us as assets instead of children, and shattered our families with divisiveness, even disconnection. It taught our parents to see us not as kids needing love and protection, but as equals who could and should fend for themselves. It manipulated our parents with guilt, fear, and propaganda, convincing them that sacrificing us was noble and even necessary. Meanwhile, our parents were the ones who signed us up, left us with strangers, or ignored our pain because they believed the nonsense so deeply. They prioritized the group and its goals over their own children, telling kids to take responsibility for our own condition, blaming us for pulling in anything bad or for not making it go right. Telling us our doubts, fears, or criticisms only meant we had crimes. Our parents supported, even enforced, the rules that hurt us. They reported us, sent us to ethics, and pressured us to conform, over and over, even discarding us if we wouldn't. So who's more to blame then? Really, it's not an either-or. That would be way easier. But both the cult and our parents played a role in what happened to us. Scientology set the stage, wrote the rules, designed the programs, and enforced the punishments. But our parents were often the ones carrying out those rules, even if believing they were doing the right thing. And that's the part that hurts the most. The people who were supposed to protect us were the ones who willingly handed us over, sacrificed us. I'll never forget being 8 years old, chasing my mom around our apartment and out into the rainy street, desperate to tell her I'd been bullied at school that day. But just watching her hurry away from me to get to the org instead. I just wanted her to stop, even for 5 minutes, and see me, hear me, feel how scared I'd been. I remember yelling, "Mom, I have to tell you something. It's important," several times as I chased her, but she seemed either not to hear me or not to care. She got in the car and closed the door, like I wasn't there at all, but rolled down the window a crack as she drove away, enough to say to me, "Whatever it is, just handle it." I realized in that moment I wasn't important to her anymore. I was on my own. The dread of that realization felt like a gut punch. That moment still sometimes sits in my chest like a stone I can't move, even now. So why do we even need to find a villain? When you're left with no closure, the pain needs somewhere to go, someone to hold accountable for everything you lost. If your parents are still alive, it's easy to direct that anger at them. They were the ones who made the choices, after all. They could have said no. If your parents are gone, the anger might have nowhere to go, leaving you lashing out at others or even at yourself. That's pretty toxic. And underneath it all, there's the ache of grief. Grief for the parent you'll never reconcile with, for the childhood you'll never get back, for the closure you may never have. So why do we sometimes lash out at each other? Without a clear villain, that anger often spills out sideways, at other survivors, at people who don't get it, even at ourselves. We turn on each other, debating who had it worse, or blaming one another for not being angry at the same things we are. But here's the truth. No amount of lashing out will bring us closure. No amount of finger-pointing will make the pain go away. So how are we supposed to navigate our pain then? When there's no closure, no apology, and no justice, the road to healing feels pretty impossible. But here's what I've learned about holding and releasing this kind of pain. You can still recognize the failures and the roles. Yes, your parents made choices, but they made those choices in a system designed to exploit them, manipulate them, and make them believe they were doing the right thing. Scientology created the conditions for all of this pain. It's okay to feel both anger and compassion for your parents. You can hold them accountable for their role while also understanding how they were controlled. Both can be true. Meanwhile, anger isn't inherently bad. It's a signal that something was wrong, something needs to change. We can harness the anger to expose the system, support other survivors, or advocate for justice. Remember, though, grief is actually at the core of the pain. Grief for what might have been, what should have been. Let yourself feel that grief. You'll need to at some point. Still, no parent is perfect, and no reconciliation will be perfect. If your parents are still alive and there's a chance for dialogue, approach it with curiosity instead of blame. But if that's not possible, it's okay to find closure within yourself. When you're really struggling with the loss of a parent through disconnection, death, or distance, know this. Your pain is valid. Your anger is valid. Your grief is valid. Healing is messy and slow. Some days you'll feel like you're flying. Other days you'll trip over your own baggage. But every little step counts. Because even if they didn't hear you, still can't or won't, you learn to hear yourself. And that's worth everything. Here's some random tips and tricks that have worked for me. Before you try to untangle the spaghetti mess that is your parent's psyche, take a moment to focus on yourself. Trust me, it helps. Maybe write a letter you'll never send. Go ahead, let it all out. Write about how you felt when they dragged you to auditing sessions instead of soccer practice. Write about the times you were told you pulled it in when bad things happened. Write about how you secretly hoped Xenu would swoop in and ground the whole operation. Then decide what to do with the letter. Keep it, burn it, or just laugh at how you wrote "Dear Mom" and then ended up with a manifesto. Try to identify what you need, if you can. Do you want validation? An apology? Just someone to say, "Yeah, that was messed up"? Knowing what you need can help keep you grounded when the conversation inevitably takes a detour into, "Why don't you just let it go?" Territory. For sure, practice compassion for yourself. Seriously, say it with me. I deserved love and protection. It wasn't my fault. And if you feel silly saying that, just remember how many hours you spent reciting "Do birds fly?" This is way less weird. When you're ready to talk to your parent, set realistic goals. This isn't going to be a Hallmark movie moment. Trust me, I've tried. Maybe aim for something smaller, like having your feelings heard, understanding their mindset, or just getting through the conversation without throwing a shoe at them. Try to use I statements. Instead of "You ruined my childhood," try "I feel hurt when I think about how alone I felt as a kid." It's harder for them to argue with your feelings than what they hear as accusations. Be specific about what you need. If you want validation, say, "I don't need you to fix this. I'm not sure you could. But what I do need is for you to understand just how much it hurt me." If you want some clarity, ask, "What were you thinking when you made that decision?" Pro tip, keep your face neutral, even when they say something wildly disappointing, and they will. If they start dismissing or deflecting, it's okay to say, "I don't feel heard right now. Let's revisit this when you're ready to listen." Then excuse yourself like the graceful, evolved adult you are, or at least pretend to be. Sometimes creativity can help break through the yuck. Try making a then versus now timeline. Put your life and theirs side by side during the years in Scientology. Include big events, emotions, and choices. Share it with them and invite them to do the same. Seeing it laid out visually might help them understand how their decisions affected you, or at least keep them from interrupting you for 5 minutes. You can even try a role reversal. Ask, "If you had been a child and I was the parent making these choices, how would you feel?" Don't hold your breath for a profound answer, but hey, miracles happen. You can even blame Scientology together. If they're resistant to discussing their role, it can help to shift the focus to the cult itself at first. Say, "We were both hurt by Scientology. Can we talk about how it impacted us differently?" Honestly, sometimes a common enemy helps you move to the same side at least. But what to do if they're still stuck or defensive? Here's the hard truth. Some parents will stay stuck, forever. If that's the case, your job is to protect your own peace. Practice setting boundaries, like limiting contact if every conversation leaves you feeling worse. You're allowed to say, "I'm willing to talk about moving on, but I can't engage if you keep dismissing my feelings." You can also find validation elsewhere. Join survivor groups, talk to a therapist, or vent to your friends who don't bat an eye when you say, "And then I got security checked," for saying Scientology sucks, out loud finally. Oops. Try practicing radical acceptance. No, this doesn't mean forgiving them for everything. It just means recognizing that they might never give you what you need. And that's okay, because your healing isn't about them. It's about you. Truth is, we can heal without their participation. Even if your parent isn't available or ready or willing to engage, you can still find healing. You could even write a letter to your younger self. Tell that kid they were amazing, that they deserved better, and that none of this was their fault. You could also try doing a guided visualization. Imagine sitting with your parent in a safe space, saying everything you need to say, and hearing them respond with love and understanding. Even if it's just in your head, it can help release some of that emotional baggage. Another cool idea is to reclaim your narrative. Write your actual story, not the one they told you, but the one you lived. Focus on how you survived, how you grew, and how you're stronger now. You really are so much stronger now, and way smarter. You've come so far. You're an honest-to-goodness survivor, despite your parents and a shitty cult doing everything they could to thwart you. That's a pretty big badge of honor. You earned it. Wear it proudly. I do.